up.
I have a question about, well, one, I would say, having worked in the industry a little bit, the question about software developers and artists working together is a very interesting one because we think differently. So just to kind of throw that out there, there is some reason why that question is being asked. One of the questions that I have as a person who managed artists, artists get fixated on what it looks like in Maya, let's say. So you start texturing your objects and you start doing that stuff, and it looks amazing. But one of the things that I always tell the artists is, I don't care what it looks like in Maya, I care what it looks like in the game. So can you guys maybe talk a little bit about how that transition that you do your stuff in Maya, and then when you see it in the game, it doesn't quite look like you were expecting?
Well, I learned this last year, of course, is that, as Charles said with his glow effect, a lot of your smoothing effects that happen, you can't expect those to pass over at all. Because I had already known this from before. I had to plan basically is any shadows, any scratches, any kind of displacement had to be planned ahead of time with the textures and baking with shadow maps and things so that it looked like it was a Maya render without actually having to process all the information.
Another issue we had was that because of either the lighting or the size of the character in the game, you can't really make out the textures. I think you may have noticed with the zombie game, the character's really small because it's kind of all arcadey and third-person RPG, so you can't really see the texture detail. So like you saw the texture file that Charles had pulled up, it's got a lot of like straight, like almost photographic level of quality, but you can't really make it out. You can just make out that, well, it's got armor and a sword. And then with the kind of the obstacle inspector problem with the space game, which I really like the way their lighting looks. It works really well for the boss, but for the main character, you can make out his backpack, and that's about it. Like his front textures, I had to spend forever on them because the entire map was front oriented, and then we realized last night that you're not going to see that. So we did a lot of really cool screenshots so that I didn't feel like a total loser. But
Somebody else?
I have a question. As a group of artists, was there any time you guys felt challenged, something that under pressure?
last night at 1 a.m.
One of the major challenges that we had was getting things from Maya 2010, which is what most of us use, including computers in the lab, to Maya 8, which is what Adam uses, because we only had one stable exporter from Maya to Ogre. So, say for instance, I would make my boss animation, and he would look fine, he would roll over, he would die, everything was there. And then we ported it over to Maya 8, and like his geometry would shoot off of his head and off into the sun. So one of the main issues we have was simply getting them from point A to point B into the game. It's probably the biggest technical challenge out of the bunch. Anything else? Is that answer your question, or?
Yes.
Okay.
A related question. For example, related thing. For example, just like the software engineers did their work, but there is a further scope for improvement. For example, they could make their things more efficient. Computer algorithms wise. Make those things more sophisticated, software engineering wise, all those kind of things. From artist perspective, if you're working for an industry, possibly you have higher bar to meet. Do you think participating in this curriculum prepares you towards that, and to what extent?
I went from making objects that had geometry in the tens of thousands and 18 different kinds of lighting and special effects to dumbing it down, but getting the same exact product. So this helped a lot. I went from knowing nothing to knowing something.
It's not just that. We don't do a lot of group projects in our curriculum in animation, just because there's so few animation students. So it's kind of nice to work in a group, even though we're working with programmers and not necessarily other artists. But that's also nice because this school's art program is really traditional art based, so you don't get a lot of technical experience with the animation program. It's mostly focused on, like he said, like making something that looks pretty instead of making something that's functional. So that's another thing that I think is important. And it also, there's stuff that we never do in animation, like developing UIs. I did the UI for the zombie team. I helped them design it. And then last semester I did the UI for the Steamboat team. And that's something that I would have never had the opportunity to do if I didn't take this class. So kind of throws a little graphic design in there, I guess. But yeah. Sorry.
David?
I think he had it last.
I was just curious to your pipelining issue with 2008 and 2011. Was there anything that you guys as a team could have done better to ensure that issue didn't happen up front?
Oh, there is some comments here. Yeah.
So this is actually a problem we had last year as well. So Maya 2010 came out, and there was an Ogre exporter for Maya 2008, is it?
Before that, 8.5.
8.5. You know, the one before Maya 2010, and it came out, and I was in charge of, you know, kind of handling the graphics for my team, and I assumed at some point someone would come out with an exporter for 2010, and they haven't. It's been at least a year, and we still have no exporter for 2010. Now there is a partial one. It can export still models, but it can't do any kind of animation. The only exporter we can use, that there is to use, is for the older version of Maya, so you know, God bless Adam and he's not upgrading, 'cause otherwise we would all be in a lot of trouble. And that's not something, I mean, unless somebody here has some hidden Maya exporter writing skills they have kept from us, in which case bad you. But unfortunately that's not something we can do anything about at this point. You know, it's just not a tool we've been given to use. So they do the best they can, and we appreciate it.
Luckily, Adam's going to be with us for a while.
This is the plan.
Well, I can share with you that we have the same issues of life, right? So the exporter is always an issue, and we're currently working through the same problems. So we export directly into our engine, and our technical artists are constantly working on the exporter, and it's monthly tasks, right, to keep that exporter up to date with new features and enhancements that come with the engine. So
yeah, I'm actually going to see if I can start pushing to, when the artists come in, teach them Blender so that we don't have this problem later on. Because
another option is just downgrade your version of Maya and use 2008 for everybody, right?
Well, if you can get it anymore. I mean, it's actually the one they released in 2007, which is 8.5, and you can't buy a license for it anymore.
But your old license, your new license